Well, good evening, everybody in Alberta, Canada, and beyond. It is Wednesday, January 18th, 2023, and I'm Kerry Lambert, and I welcome you to an online webinar evening of Solutions for a New Alberta, brought to you by the Alberta Prosperity Project, also known as APP. We are a nonpartisan, not-for-profit educational society who are advocating, as inspiring, and educating all Albertans on the merits of freedom and prosperity through independence. Of course, this couldn't be done without your help. And if this is your first time watching, welcome. And I hope you find this information engaging and wanting to find out more. And if you're a regular APP webinar viewer, thank you for your support. We couldn't do this without you. APP is membership driven with a goal of 1 million plus members to help steer the political process, especially this year being 2023 and an election year. APP memberships are 1 year for $20, 2 years for $30, 3 years for $40, and you can find out more at albertaprosperityproject.com. And tonight's webinar is entitled Alberta Justice, a Flawed System. And we hope to answer questions like, is our justice system flawed? If so, how is it flawed? And how can we make it better? And this is a live webinar, so we encourage you to ask questions and make comments throughout this presentation. And if you want to ask a question, just put 3 question marks before your question in the comments. And then that way it flags us as really being a question. So we actually have 2 amazing people here tonight. So normally it's just me and someone else, or we have 2 people, but we actually have, I'm going to go with, it doesn't really matter. I guess I got Katherine's up here first, so I'll introduce Katherine here. Katherine Kowalchuk is from Lawyers for Truth. She co-founded Lawyers for Truth in December 2021. She is a family law lawyer in Alberta since 2003. And she's been vocal and active in calling out the government tyranny in Alberta. And so that is Katherine. Thank you very much for joining us here. I guess it's this way.
Hi, everyone.
And we have Granny Margaret McKay, who I used to just call her McKay all the time because being Canadian, that seems to be the way it is. But it is McKay. And I guess I would call you an activist, politically and just trying to find out what the hell is going on. And you've taken it upon yourself to get involved, jumping in. You could say head first into what's been happening with the boys down in Coots. So maybe that's how we can start this conversation, because I know that's where people are really asking questions about right now. So, obviously we're trying to find out what exactly is happening here in Alberta with the justice. So why don't we start by saying, so what's happening in Coots? What even happened in Coots? What we had a convoy. We ended up going out to Ottawa, if anybody remembers, in January 23rd, I think is when we left Calgary. But basically we ended up getting out there on the 28th. And we overstayed our welcome, according to people out east. And at that time, there was another convoy that took place that went down to Coots, Alberta. And maybe you can kind of fill us in a little bit, Margaret, as to what happened there.
Well, to be honest, I don't know a lot that happened there because I was in Ottawa, as you know.
You were actually with us. Yeah.
I was there from the start to the end and then some, because I didn't get home till March 13th.
Okay. Yes, so, you were. That's right.
Yeah. I was actually outside of the remand center in Ottawa waiting for George and Pat to get out.
Okay.
And as we all know, that didn't happen. So Sarah and I came home.
That's right. So who is George and who is Pat? Just so people know.
Well, they were 2 people. They were 2 people that were part of the convoy, and
George and
I'm Pat. Yeah,
Pat.
Everybody knows who they are.
Oh yes, okay.
Yeah.
Well, people are interested, then they can always do their own research on the names that we list off. So okay, continue.
So that was my first lesson on people not getting out of jail.
Yeah.
Not innocent until proven guilty. They went through quite a bit too. Yeah. So on the way home, we were hearing about some arrests and some charges in Coots. It was very blurred, as you know. It was hard to keep track of what was going on.
Yeah.
So when I got back home, I kept asking, who was arrested, who got charged, is anybody in jail?
Yeah.
And I couldn't get any answers. It was like crickets.
Yeah.
And then finally, I'm not sure, I posted in that Coots site, and it was actually you that came below and gave me 4 names.
Probably. That's right.
Yeah. And so I got 4 names, still didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
And found out they were still in jail. And all I could think about was the mothers.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, oh my gosh, somebody's kids. Doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah.
They're somebody's kids.
Yeah.
So I started looking into it a little bit further and found out they were still in jail. Nobody was paying attention to them.
Yeah.
I started putting some posts out trying to find out myself what was going on.
Yeah.
Then I started getting reached out by the family. Some family members started contacting me. The stories I was hearing was so upsetting.
Yeah.
And then it was like the public just forgot about them. And the freedom movement moved on without them.
Yeah.
And part of the freedom movement is no man left behind. And these 4 were left behind and then some.
That's right.
And so I started digging into who they were. I got their pictures. I started posting their addresses for the remand centers.
Yep.
Started getting people. I'm big into mental health. That's how I kind of started with a couple years ago, was all to do with mental health and COVID.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, oh my gosh, these guys are inside jail, and what's their mental health like?
Oh,
so
for
then
sure.
And okay, I got to back up a bit.
Yeah.
So after I saw what I saw in Ottawa, the lies the government told, the lies that the media told, the lies that the police told, we saw it, or I saw it firsthand, and it was very upsetting. So in my mind, I'm thinking, what if they're lying in Coots too? I'm just saying, my head went there.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it go there? I saw lies from Ottawa.
Yeah.
So I started asking questions, and then I stay in the middle of the road, innocent until proven guilty. It is not my business to know the details. It's not my business to know anything about what happened. Yeah. My business, as being a Canadian and an Alberta citizen, is justice. Because if these 4 men cannot get justice, none of us are going to have justice. And if I end up in jail, I sure hope somebody's going to speak up for me. Because nobody spoke. Nobody. The family got worn out. The friends got worn out. Everybody was exhausted.
Yeah.
So then I started sharing who the men were. I am good friends with the family now. Everybody thinks one of them is my son. No, my son is not in jail. I don't know the man. I've never met the man. I've met 2 of the family members to date. I've talked to everybody on the phone. I talked to the men on the phone. That's how I know them now. And so I'm just pushing forward, trying to find justice.
Yeah. And so who are these guys? Well,
I don't know if you can see this.
Actually, I was just going to call that up on the screen here. If Shauna might be able to do that. I've got it. That's what I was tinkering with right there. So basically, you put this together. So what?
Yes, I did.
Tell us what's going on with that.
Okay, so Chris Carbert is in the sunglasses, Jerry Morin, the cowboy hat, and then we got Tony Oleanek, and then we got Chris Lysick on the other end.
Okay.
Now, I started, as we know, the media doesn't really help anybody these days unless it helps them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be a smart, I won't swear, but you know what I mean. We got to get in front of the media. They don't want to help us.
Yeah.
So I came up with a bumper sticker program to go across Canada.
Perfect.
And people will start asking about these men, and people will start realizing we have people in jail that are not getting due process.
Yeah.
And it's been a nightmare what these men have gone through. It's honestly the lawyers are like a revolving door, and there's a whole thing there. I'm not going to speak much about that, but that story will come out soon. It's not a good story.
Okay. Yeah, because what we've heard anyways is it's the continuing rhetoric, the people saying, well, we've got a process going on here. If they get in front of a judge within 18 months, then that's good enough. And I'm not sure whether Katherine can answer on any of those sorts of allegations that people are saying. They're saying that there's reasons why they're kept in jail. And what would actually be the process normally of someone that is arrested? And it doesn't matter what they're arrested on. Let's just, whether or not it's attempted something or actually, whatever. What would be the process? If I was supposed to be arrested, what would be the process that I would be going through?
Well, you would be attending a bail hearing, first of all. And I think that's the first thing that, of course, happened in this case as well. But as you know, bail was denied, and they've seen fit apparently to extend that. And as far as I know, actually, after speaking with Granny McKay, that some of these guys can't even get lawyers now because they've exhausted all their financial resources.
Wow.
Obviously, they haven't been able to contribute to their legal battle because they're in jail, and I find that to be the biggest miscarriage of justice right there, because the charges are one thing, and we can talk about that later in terms of my opinion, not about, because I don't know intimately what the charges are, and I obviously haven't seen the evidence.
Yeah.
However, we do know that violent offenders are released on bail routinely, and this is a common knowledge within the RCMP and within the judicial system.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, the only reason why I can think that these boys are still sitting in jail right now is because of the political motivation to keep them in jail. It's to send a message to all of us freedom fighters. Yeah. It's to chill the movement. Yeah. And it's to discourage people from getting involved and resisting what the government is forcing down our throats.
So do you know, were you watching any of the Convoy hearing out in Ottawa, the circus that basically went on for 3 weeks, talking about, how the convoy happened and who it was and how the Emergencies Act was enacted? Did you watch any of that? And if so, can you make any comment whatsoever on whether or not the boys in Coots had anything to do with that?
Well, I think that whole political theater commission event was just that. It was political theater. From what I understand, Trudeau set the parameters of what the commissioner would be able to look at. From what I did see also, the commissioner, they really did make it out to be some sort of mock trial where the freedom fighters and the truckers and families and friends supporting them were basically put on this mock trial, from what I can tell. And I'm not confident that we are actually going to see any justice as a result of that. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think that they will do whatever they can to, at best, maybe slap Trudeau's hands, and make recommendations in terms of what they could add to the Emergencies Act in order to give the public the perception that this won't happen again. But in reality, this did happen. And the fact that, unredacted or redacted evidence was put forward to the lawyers, sometimes within a very short period of time. Yeah. The fact that there was time limits on the questioning, the fact that, lawyers were thrown out of the commission for voicing their opposition with respect to how they were being treated by the commission. Yeah. I think for any Canadian who saw what happened, and in fact, there were 2 lawyers for Truth lawyers who presented at the commission as well. And we'll see what happens, but I'm not overly optimistic that anything of substance will come out of that whole exercise.
Do you know anything more about Preston Manning's public inquiry? Because that was kind of being talked about on the heels of this Emergencies Act, and I actually have not heard anything further. So,
Well, I know that it's continuing. The last I understand is that they're looking for people to sit, I guess, on the panels to hear this evidence, and also probably trying to find people to present as well. I think any awareness that is brought to the attention of the injustices that have occurred over the past 3 years in particular should be applauded. However, Preston Manning notes himself that and others have noted that they really don't have any powers to compel, to subpoena testimony, and that in and of itself will, I think, frustrate the process. COVID Care Alliance did a similar exercise months before. I don't know, it could have been a while before, that got very little coverage as well. And I do think that it's really good to hear the people's stories and understand where we're at, but really without the next step of having the teeth of being able to take these findings and hold people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Again, is it much ado about nothing? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So just to kind of get back to the question about the boys in Coots. So they were arrested federally, right? With I believe it was attempted murder of
conspiracy
to commit against RCMP officers. So that was federal because it was an RCMP officer. Is that the reason why it's federal?
It's federal because they're criminal charges, and the criminal code is federal legislation, and so it falls under Ottawa's purview, and therefore that's what makes it federal.
Okay, so we also have a couple of other people, Alex Van Herk, Marco Van Hoekenbos, and George Jansen, who were also arrested, basically, from my understanding, for standing up and speaking at the Coots blockade meeting, if you want to call it that. But that's a different thing, because it seems to be that is provincial. And the reason I say that is because it doesn't seem to involve the feds. And we now have Rebel News who's coming in and backing them with Fight the Fines. But yet Rebel News is not backing the four guys from the conspiracy. So any comments on that either way?
I'm not familiar with what the other guys are charged with. They may be provincial offenses, probably under the Public Health Act, perhaps. Yeah. So that could be the distinction there. As for how Rebel News decides who they're going to help, I have no idea how they make that determination and what factors go into that. Yeah. I do think, and I don't know, Granny, were you trying to fundraise as well? What happened with that?
Well, I am fundraising right now. We've got a Give, Send, Go that's set up with the approval of all four families. It's the only Give, Send, Go that's set up right now. Okay. And it's a slow go. People are afraid to donate because the bank accounts were closed or shut down when the Convoy money was raised. So people are more apt to put cash in a bucket than they are to do anything. I've actually got people that will e-transfer me money. Yeah. They will send me a check. They will give me cash to go and put it on the Give, Send, Go, but they won't do it themselves. It's a hard go.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the politicians wanted. That's exactly why they did exactly what they did. I find it really interesting. Like, a lot has transpired over the last 3 years in particular with respect to unveiling the inadequacies of our judicial system. It does go beyond that as well. I can tell you that, like, the Law Society of Alberta has changed the rules of the Law Society after the fact, mind you, to compel lawyers to take cultural competency training. And the first thing that they did was to make a requirement of our membership to take a course on Indigenous history, for instance.
Okay.
That's basically what it's about. And I'm not saying that I'm not a proponent of learning about Indigenous rights and Indigenous history, etc. What I do find quite concerning about the legal profession, and this by extension can relate to the justice system as well, is that they're making it a requirement under for lawyers to take this cultural competency training, and they plan on doing more training. And the rules in the Law Society Act, many lawyers have resisted this. And in fact, we were able to get a petition signed to the Law Society demanding a special meeting to repeal the rule that they voted in favor of after they gave themselves the authority to demand cultural competency training of their lawyers. And so we're going to be having a special general meeting sometime before February 13th. And it's going to be important for all lawyers to be involved in that and to attend. It's likely going to be online because one, it's our position that the Law Society of Alberta does not have the jurisdiction to mandate that sort of training under the Legal Profession Act. And two, this notion that, the Law Society is supposed to protect the public and govern lawyers to ensure that they're behaving ethically. Mm-hmm. And they're not causing harm, and that the public are protected. And a lot of the rules stem around holding of funds, for instance, in trust. And there's lots of rules around that. That's one thing. But what the Law Society doesn't have the authority to do, in our opinion, is to mandate this cultural training, because in effect, what they're doing is they're lawyers as professionals ought to be able to decide which training they want to undertake as part of meeting their professional requirements to their clients, which involve understanding the law, understanding the case law, and understanding the legal issues. Cultural training, like what the Law Society has done, does not fall within that purview. And what people don't understand, and even people who found the training helpful or informative, don't understand that the Law Society, it's a slippery slope between that and what, for instance, Jordan Peterson is going through right now with the college in Ontario, and them requiring social media training and things like that. So we're seeing in this country a swell of wokeist ideology taking over almost every institution. And what I found really interesting about when Danielle Smith got elected, and I happen to agree with her, is this statement that was quoted of her on that was published on October 22nd, 2022. And she said, with respect to the fines that people were receiving and had received under the Public Health Act and federally as well, she said, quote, "It was a political decision to throw out the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to put those fines in place in the first place. And I think it can be a political decision to make amends and apologize for it and eliminate them," end quote. Okay. And I agree with her. This is all political, and this always has been political. Yeah. And from my perspective, if the government had any political will to do right by these four men in jail right now, and pastors who have been persecuted and charged have been put in jail, other people who have been fined, ticketed, put in jail, and otherwise censored, they have the political will to do this. And it's no different than really what Tyler Shandro has done with the gun grab. Mm-hmm. He's made it very, very clear that Alberta is not going to enforce that federal legislation that's coming in. And I think that Danielle Smith can do the same thing here. The issue is, from my perspective, in terms of why she won't do it, is because her whole cabinet was responsible for invoking laws and enforcing laws that violated the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Alberta Human Rights Act, right from the very beginning. Danielle Smith, when she was campaigning and after she got elected as leader, was very clear that she was going to take action with AHS. She did take action by appointing a left-leaning liberal who wears rainbow masks and encourages people to run out and get their third booster or booster. She fired the board, and so now there's one person who's overseeing all this right now. But what she also did was she absolved the government really of any wrongdoing, blaming a naive and inexperienced new premier, Jason Kenney, who recently had become the premier of Alberta, and that he was essentially, these are my words, I'm paraphrasing, but he was essentially duped by AHS and Dina Heehaw. Well, you know, that's quite easy. So it's quite easy to do and convenient. You know, there should have been a public inquiry called, and there still should be a public inquiry called. But the fact that her cabinet is made up of these people, and Tyler Shandro, who's the AG, is also not keen on making these reforms to these laws, is problematic, because how can the government then not attract liability when they don't enforce the laws where most of their cabinet was enforcing in the first place? This is all political, and it always has been political. And so she may not have the pull to pardon. She may not have the pull to influence, but she can, because she can change the laws. And she can change the zeitgeist of Alberta in the minds of Albertans. She came out and she can change for instance, the Employment Standards Code.
Yeah.
She can add vaccination discrimination to the Human Rights Act. She can change the Alberta Bill of Rights. She can amend the Public Health Act, and she promised to do that when she was running for leader. And instead, we were delivered the Sovereignty Do Nothing Act. And there's not going to be anything that we're going to be able to do under that act that we already aren't able to do. And in fact, we are seeing the devastation that these governments continue to bestow upon Albertans and Canadians. And we see that with things such as, you know, the carbon tax increasing. The industrial carbon tax emission is going to be increased, and it's going to be going at $15 a year each year until 2030, where they meet their goal of $170 per ton.
Yeah.
Now, if you believe that carbon dioxide is a pollutant, if you believe that climate change is real, then I guess you're on board with something like this. Yeah. But I actually don't think most Albertans feel that way. And
I would definitely say most don't, and certainly probably the majority of the viewers that are watching right now are not, because we've had interviews with Michelle Sterling. We even had a conversation with Christopher Scott last week, in which he came back from the Netherlands and was telling us what is happening over there will probably end up happening here, unless we actually say, to hell with this, we need to make this stop. So I'm pretty sure, and even the people that I just kind of ran into on the street, and we have this conversation right away, it's like, oh, hell no, there's that climate change thing isn't real, but they have no idea how to stop it. And that's why people
have to get politically involved. And the thing is, Danielle Smith, I mean, you know, I've said this before. I mean, the NDP they tell you exactly the tyranny that they're going to give you, and kudos for them for being transparent, right? this is turncoat politics, and it's no different. I mean, whether or not, I don't know how Danielle Smith feels personally about it, and what the politics are behind the scenes that are preventing her from doing this, but she's a net zero junkie. Yeah. She's full on this carbon tax reduce net zero train. And so, you know, one of the things that I've learned about over the last 3 years, and read, you know, a book called Live Not by Lies. And we don't have any time. We don't have any time to be polite about this, you know, from a perspective of, okay, well, let's just give people the benefit of the doubt. They didn't really mean that. That's not what's really going to happen. They're going to do the right thing ultimately. But we know people by their actions. Mm-hmm. And we know that these politicians don't have the political will. What they have been doing is they've been putting up a lot of nothing, these nothing bills that do nothing. Yeah. And they're designed to placate Albertans and to trick them into thinking that something's going to happen. Yeah. You know, people have said to me, well, you know, we just have to make sure that Rachel Notley doesn't get in. Okay.
That's the big scare that most people have.
But don't you think, like, just think of, and this is a plea to Danielle Smith. Be brave and courageous, Danielle. If you are really against, if you really believe that the unvaccinated were discriminated against, if you really believe that these charges were politically motivated and that the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms were completely disregarded, you have an ethical duty and obligations to Albertans. If you want to convince Albertans that you are the right leader for Alberta, you will live not by lies, and you will tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. And that goes for everybody in her cabinet and all the doctors and anybody else who was complicit in advancing this government tyranny. And you know what? How do we know that she won't win based on that?
That is true.
We know that Albertans, I know after traveling the province for the past, all of last year, speaking to people, that we all know that our MLAs aren't representing us. We all know that there are side deals being done, that we actually don't have any medical or other sovereignty with respect to any of our rights and freedoms in Canada or in Alberta. Yeah. Think of how, I just think that she would get such a great reception from Albertans if she was just honest. Yeah. She was just honest with us, and she did what she said she was going to do. But the thing is, she loves her job. She loves being premier. Mm-hmm. And this is the problem. And this is the problem of human beings in general, you know, and people like her and the politicians have to put their self-interest way, way behind them. Mm-hmm. They have to do what's right. And I'm really tired of it. I'm really tired of hearing the same old. And so, you know, I hope the viewers hear that. I hope the viewers here, especially the freedom people who have been placated by Danielle Smith's promises.
How do we get past it? Like, how do we go forward? How do we help these men?
That's right.
Well, you know, it comes down to public opinion. Well, what's public opinion?
Well, look at this isn't going to happen overnight. I mean, everybody wants a quick solution tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is that a majority of our population does not understand and does not know. And that is because the media is bought off. They are paid off, and they are their mouthpieces for the government who have
which is the whole point of the Alberta Prosperity Project, in order to educate people, right? And to talk about these taboo, you can't talk about at the dinner table type of topics. Don't talk politics. Don't talk religion, right? Like exactly. That's what we need to get back into. So one of the things I was going to ask Katherine is, you said, if our premier actually came out and said all this stuff and then changed the laws. So what would be that process for her to do that? Obviously, she would have to say, you know what, I don't agree with climate change. This is what's going to happen, yada, yada. But it still actually has to go back through legislation in order to amend any or make new laws. What kind of timeline are we looking at that? Because of course now the big thing is we've got an election coming in May, and we don't want to rock the boat too much so that we can possibly win, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, look at how fast she drafted and passed the Sovereignty Do Nothing Act.
Yeah, that was pretty quick, considering pretty cool. when she was doing the debate, she really didn't have anything in paper, right?
Well, purportedly, who really knows, right? But I'm sure they worked on it. The act isn't very long. Yeah. I mean, yes, you need to cross-reference this act and that act and make sure that they all make sense and all the rest of it. But she's had a long time to do that. Yeah. And, when she came out and she said that, we need to reflect on this further, and I'll just make phone calls if your employer, I'll call your employer if he doesn't, or your wannabe employer, they're discriminating against you.
Yeah. And even as it is, I think we all know people that are still being discriminated against. And, I get comments all the time, like, we're back to normal. What have you got to concern?
No, we're not back to normal. And,
I'm an actor and an actor, and I cannot work on any shows. Yeah. Right?
No, I hear you.
Because that is the way it's set up right now. And I've gone back to the union to discuss this sort of thing. And basically it says, well, it comes down to who the producers are, and they make up the rules. So it's great that we're getting all these big productions in from the US, but they are so bought off in Hollywood about what's going on that I cannot get a job going forward for any production coming to Canada. Guaranteed.
Oh yeah, but so Carrie, you should probably call Danielle Smith, and she can maybe call them for you, because that's what her solution was, right? Yeah.
Well, I know, like Ron DeSantis, he's basically done the exact same sort of idea in Florida. That like, again, talking about Disney. Mm-hmm. You cannot discriminate against hiring somebody at Disney because of such and such. So great, the floodgates are open. So now everything is working great there. I mean, it certainly seems to be one of the freest states down there. But there's no reason why we in Alberta couldn't be the Florida or even the Texas of Canada. I'm surprised that, we've got the 10 provinces and territories that not one officially has stood up and said, you know what, I really question what's going on, until Danielle was brought in. And really, she read from the APP playbook. Everything that was said was what she stood up for.
Right. Well, okay. Now we all need to put on our thinking caps. Okay. And we all need to discern. Yeah. People say a lot of things.
Yes. Yeah.
Clearly by her actions, we do know what her intentions are. Yeah. So she's going to roll out net zero. Yeah. Okay. Like these net zero policies. Yeah. And, and this was the reason why I became a member of the Independence Party of Alberta. And why I became a firm believer in leaving Canada. Because we have these problems, and they're not solvable with necessarily this provincial. What's the word I'm looking for? We're not going to necessarily be able to resolve this without court intervention, and even with the courts, we know that they're sideways anyway, and progressive leaning, and so. They bought into the fact that there's a climate change emergency, and that it is sufficient such that they need to bestow the federal government with jurisdiction over things like imposing carbon tax, etc. So we're not going to get any relief from the court. And so we're either going to get the blue version of genocide or the orange version of genocide. And why is net zero genocide? Well, net zero is genocide because we are going to destroy our economy, and people are going to starve, and people are going to become depressed, and people are going to take desperate actions because they have nowhere else to turn, because they've been completely given up by their governments. Right? And so I don't know if Albertans need to go through. I mean, you certainly don't need to go all the way to the bottom. We don't need to hit rock bottom, but we don't have time to believe that, oh, Danielle Smith, she can't do what she's doing. She'll do it when she gets reelected. Really? And how are you going to get good people reelected, Danielle? How is that possible when you're not allowing people to even run for nomination in the ridings that they wish to seek to represent because of a social media post? I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. And what the conservatives, the so-called conservatives, have done is they've kind of pandered and knelt down to these woke leftists that seem to have captivated them. They're afraid to offend anybody and or trigger anybody. You know, microaggressions would be caused all over the place, and so it's going to be up to Albertans to stand up and rise and to elect people who actually put their money where their mouth is and who have been vocal, and you will see that through their actions. And so, I mean, I'm planning on running as an independent in my riding, and I think that people
as an independent, not for the Independence Party.
That's correct. Yeah,
so the other thing I did want to mention, because I'm sure someone will be banging on their keyboard, I just want to say again that we are a nonpartisan, not-for-profit educational society who are advocating, inspiring, and educating Albertans on the merits of freedom and prosperity through independence. So we are not endorsing any particular candidate. We're not endorsing any particular party, but we are endorsing the ideas. And so
APP has to endorse a call to action. And how else are you going to get people to rise up and participate in their lives without them considering politics as an avenue of that, right? And that's all I'm saying. And yes, APP has definitely not endorsed me. So, but that's my plan. And I think other people need to consider, if you don't align with a political party, then consider running on your own. Because that's what fundamentally our democracy intended. And political parties actually have created a giant, huge mess. And I think people who are educated on the issues and encourage constituents, when you're voting for somebody, you take that into consideration, because nothing changes if nothing changes, is what I've always said. But at the same time, people need to get involved. And some people say to me, well, they don't want to get involved in politics or because they're not political. Well, let's think about that for a little bit. Politics has basically enveloped every aspect of our lives. Going to the grocery store during COVID became political. All of our lives, sending your kids to school to maybe, learn about colonialism and white supremacy and how guilty you should feel because your ancestors did something that you had no control over. And by the way, let's end the day with a drag show. Drag queen show. I mean, that's political. It's all political. What is in our food is political. What they're spraying in our skies, it's political. And so we need to see things from a different perspective right now. And the attitude of somebody else is going to do it, and that's not really my cup of tea. I encourage people to reconsider that, because it all is political now, and we can't escape it from my perspective.
We've said that kind of right from the beginning of the COVID and getting involved, right? Like, it doesn't matter what, it's great. Get involved in a constituency association. I didn't even know what one was like a year ago, right? And yet here I am kind of where I am. But people should be involved no matter what. Like, get involved in your community watch program. Go out and meet your neighbors. I think that's the other thing too. I have neighbors here that, now granted, I'm never home, but that I have not even met. Right. And that's what I need to do, is go and bang on doors and find out if they are interested in any of this, as well as, get involved with your school. Right. I don't have school age kids anymore, but I certainly am really intrigued by what is going on, the whole Soji and, like you said, the drag show. And like, I really want to have those conversations with people in charge. Right. And so people that are watching, you should be doing the same thing. Like, get involved. Just even if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable, you know what? We've been so comfortable for so long, and now we're uncomfortable. Let's get a little more uncomfortable and actually have these conversations. Right. So I'm just going to go back to Margaret over here again. So again, we talked about how these laws would end up possibly getting changed, and again, it's all this fluff that may or may not happen before an election, etc. But in the meantime, we've had some questions here, and can the Coots guys get any legal aid? Can they go through that sort of a process? Maybe even getting Rebel News to look after those guys. Of course, they're looking after the other three, but not the four. And obviously, is there any lawyer that could do it for free? Which lawyers don't do anything for free. Sorry, Catherine. But
well, I mean, let's be honest. Like, okay,
yeah,
I don't get paid unless I get paid by a client.
That's right.
That's my arrangement. Okay. Yeah. And so what am I to do if I worked on a case that needs this sort of attention?
Yeah. How
possibly would I feed my family?
That's mean, right.
And so it's not that lawyers don't want to do the work, but it's a lot of work, and you need to, so I empathize so much with what is happening, and I feel so horrified for these guys that are sitting in jail right now, because it's a complete injustice for sure. And what you've done by bringing attention to them, the way you've done that, is absolutely perfect. But I agree with you, more needs to be done. But yeah, I think that why isn't Rebel looking at this?
Yeah.
They won't talk. And I'm sorry to say that out loud, but they don't want to even acknowledge it. Like, there was confusion with the 4 and the 3. And it was me screaming from the rafters, it's not the 4. No. Rebel's helping the 4. No, they're not. They're helping the 3 that aren't in jail.
Likewise, there's a couple of other people. So, and I don't have the name in front of me, but there was another girl, the one that took the prisoners in, and then she ended up Joanne Persons. That's right. She ended up going in front of court, and basically, I guess it was dismissed on Monday as well, wasn't it? Yeah. And another guy, James Sowery, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's also being going to the courts now. So, and it sounds like they're actually going back through Facebook posts and trying to find texts, and in order to do all this. I guess legally, anything that gets posted online, is it fair game for the police to go through? That's just a question. I don't know if there's an actual answer to that. I guess it depends.
I think so. I think so. It's fair game. It's public.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
what are they looking for?
I have no idea. Maybe anybody that's involved, which obviously would include all of us. Right?
Yeah.
So in theory, they could be coming after all of us. They could even be coming after anybody that maybe went to the local grocery store and went against the arrows on that one particular day. You shouldn't have done that because you got somebody sick. Like, how would they even do that? I have no idea. But all I really wanted to say, so we're kind of looking at what can we do right now. So like Margaret's got the Give Send Go that we've talked about. Is there anything else going on for the guys? Any kind of fundraiser going on?
Well, there's I guess it's an anniversary convoy going down to Coots.
Okay.
And there's going to be a fundraiser down there.
Okay.
And that's on the 28th. And I had a strange phone call tonight.
Yeah.
At about 5:15, I had Staff Sergeant Jay Buckner give me a call. And he wanted to know about the convoy that I'm organizing.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not organizing a convoy.
Yeah.
And he says, well, can we meet tomorrow and have a chat about it? And I went, why? I'm not organizing it.
Yeah.
So there's a mistake right there. Proof in the pudding, a mistake. He said, no, an email went across his desk with my name on it. And obviously my phone number.
Yeah.
And he's looking to help be a liaison for the convoy that's going down to Coots for the anniversary, and I agree, he wants to keep everybody safe. So Staff Sergeant Jay Buckner, phone number 780-410-4346. If anybody knows the organizers of the convoy, could you please give them Jay Buckner's phone number, please?
Yeah.
There, done my part.
Like even these posters, I mean, we've posted them already on our sites, and they're just, it's out there, domain. I don't know who the originator is, and it's like the convoy. It's just a generic, people are interested in it, and if they want to go down, obviously the poster says what the convoy is. It looks like there's a barbecue and silent auction. It does say safety first, please obey traffic laws and be courteous.
Well, Jay wants to help, so
yes, yeah, okay. So then that certainly helps. So,
but what can we do? Is there any kind of public opinion? Is there somebody we can try and push? Like, there are 4 men, and I'm going to say hypothetically, let's say they're innocent.
Yes.
Their families are ruined. They had 7 children amongst 3 of them.
Yeah.
They were the providers for these 7 children.
Yeah.
The families have been destroyed. 2 of them have lost everything. They've went through, I think, 7 lawyers between 3 of them right now.
Yeah.
One's got legal aid. He's got a lawyer. Legal aid says they're sending the stuff over. And when he phoned today, it's been flagged. Somebody put a stop on it. Well, who's putting a stop on it?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. There's been lawyers interfering. There's been the Crown interfering. Enough. So who is supposed to speak up for these men?
Yeah.
Because 161-year-old grandma is not enough.
No, that's right.
So
this
help.
And this is part of what you're doing here too. Like, we need to get the media on side. Like, we really need to get the media to understand what's at stake, because it's not just about these guys, it's about them ultimately. Like, this type of behavior is going to affect all of us, but right now it's about continuing to raise this awareness. Because restitution needs to be made. I think it's definitely within the government's wheelhouse to bring legislation in that puts an end to all of this and makes restitution to people.
Yeah. Like, put them on house arrest, do something like there's fathers at play here. Their children need them. Like Chris Lysick, I was on the phone with him just before we came on air, and like, his one daughter, he would like to, find out what's going on with her. And like, this has been hard on the children, like extremely hard.
I can't even imagine.
Do these parents have any parental rights anymore? They're innocent until proven guilty. So do they have any parental rights?
Well, the thing is, there's a massive trend that I've seen over my career with the judiciary, and it stems from the zeitgeist, I think, of our world, really, that more and more parental rights are being eroded. And like, for instance, like, children at the ages of around 13, 14, 15 and above can decide what they want to do for themselves. And judges will enforce that, whatever the kid wants to do, regardless of how crazy it is or how many puberty blockers they want to take, right? Parents are being eroded from the equation already, like, secret societies under the guise that they're going to be abused at home. Well, how many of those people just were told by their parents that, no, we're not going to put you on puberty blockers until you're 18 years old and you're an adult and can figure it out on your own? How many people just said, no, I'm your parent, that's not going to happen, and not under my house? We need to look at this as from a bigger point of view, because this has been something that this is systemic. This bias and this prejudice and this inequality and this plan of Satan, I will call it, has been unrolling for decades, and we are seeing the fruits of it right now. And unfortunately, we're behind the 8 ball in terms of combating it, but it doesn't mean that we don't continue to try. Right. And there might be no magic, wand that we can. I wish there was. Believe me, I wish there was, and I think you all do too. But now it's incumbent upon us to just get active. It's not, and to not be afraid. And I know a lot of people, a lot of my good friends are, as well, like they believe what we believe in, but they're afraid. And my appeal, I guess, is to those people. We can't stay silent any longer. No. And it's about pushing back in all instances. It's about challenging the governing bodies. It's about challenging your employer. It's about challenging the schools, making sure that you're, voicing your opinion to the extent that, and it's about getting involved. But we have to change the way society sees this. Yeah. And when we recognize what's at play here, we need to level up as a society. Mm-hmm. Need to, and we don't have any more time to just wait for somebody else to fix it, wait for Danielle Smith to do the right thing, because she's not going to. She's been given that opportunity and she's failed.
Yeah. Well, she keeps, and I think right now she's probably thinking if she says anything, it's political suicide. Well, or maybe it might be political suicide if she doesn't help these 4 men. Maybe she should think that way.
That is true.
That's what I think. Why can't, like, I agree. Be the Ron DeSantis of Canada.
Yeah. Talk about the elephant in the room. Like, get it on the table.
Because people respond to the truth. Mm-hmm. And people appreciate the truth. And I think that, playing into these psychopaths and their agenda, they're culpable. These people are culpable too. Like, you have an oath, a duty. You took an oath and you have a duty to Albertans. Yeah. She needs anybody in that position, all MLAs, all elected officials, city councilors, whatever. They need to level up and stop being cowards.
Can I ask a question? So hypothetically, again, if there are some liars in this equation that are lying about certain events that took place or lying about, I don't know, anything. Yeah. And it gets proven that these guys are innocent. Those people that were part of the lies and part of what happens to them? They just can't walk out of this.
I think it depends what the lie is and how it was disseminated, but maybe there are defamation cases and civil suits that can be brought.
Mm-hmm. What about CBC posting that, like, there was supposed to be redacted documents, right. Yep. And they put the real, like, the whole thing out there and then went, oops, sorry, we pulled it back down.
Well, I would say sue them, but I have such zero faith in our judiciary that they would do the right thing anyway. And that's the problem. I mean, sure, create a public record. You might find somebody who's keen enough to actually, and brave enough, a judge who's brave enough to enforce the law as it's written without fear of reprisal from the woke brigade. Yeah. But, those things, certainly must, elect somebody who's prepared to give restitution to these people. Yeah. I mean, when you find out who's caused what damage. We certainly know that the government has caused a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up a good point about the judges. So what is actually the process of a certain case being brought in front of a certain judge? And the reason I'm asking that is because, from my understanding, is that there are certain judges that look over certain precedents, etc. And as far as I understand, that let's say we go into child and family health or family. Let me say that again.
Services.
Child and family services. My understanding is it really is only under one judge.
Well, I think that the chief justices of each level of court has the authority to assign judges to things and justices. And so, I suspect some of that is probably happening because there seemed to be a trend across Canada where the chief justices were dealing with a lot of these issues, or the associate chief justices were dealing with these issues. And why is that the case, right? So, and trying to understand how that works within the judiciary. I mean, you can imagine that. I mean, a group of lawyers filed a complaint with the Canadian Judicial Council against Supreme Court Justice Wagner for his comments about the trucker convoy and his blatant bias remarks that he made to a media publication in Quebec. And we filed a complaint saying, look, you're going to hear these cases eventually, hopefully, if they don't get dismissed because they're moot. And so you're going to hear these cases. It's inappropriate for you to do this. You need to have a plan to recuse yourself and stop it. Like you have to stop it. You have personal opinions, but you need to appear unbiased and conduct yourself accordingly. And our complaint was dismissed, but he's also the chair of the Canadian Judicial Council. So, we need major reforms in all areas, including in our lawmaking, but also in our judiciary as well. We need a mechanism to hold judges accountable, and we need it to be more transparent. Some people have suggested, and I think that there's nothing wrong with this, is electing judges or creating some sort of mechanism so that, because right now they're tenured and they stay on until they, stumble into court, and they don't know whatever. So there needs to be a mechanism to deal with that and clearly more transparency, because I think if they took a public opinion poll about the public's faith in the judiciary, as a family law lawyer, in that cross-section alone, I can tell you that they would be failing dismally.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly a lot to talk about. We're at just over an hour. We can easily talk for another extra hour, for sure. I did want to talk a little bit more about the stuff so we've, cover it. Of course, we can never cover everything. Covering a little bit of what's going on in Coots, and so what's happening with Lawyers for Truth, and you're advocating for people that were let go from work, and likewise, I do want to know if you have any comments about any. I kind of brought it up, the child and family services type of stuff that's going on here in Alberta. Do you want to talk about any of that?
Well, sure. I mean, what Lawyers for Truth really is good at doing is connecting people with other lawyers. Of course, we were really pivotal in helping people assert their rights with respect to not wearing a mask, and also helping people with the vaccination. We connected a lot of people who were fired with lawyers so that they could get some assistance. And, I'm bringing my own case before, I'm suing the Court of King's Bench and the Provincial Court of Alberta over their masking law policy. And it's a charter challenge. And so we're still working on that. I mean, justice is, that whole thing is quite a slow process. So we continue to do that. And we're going to continue to help people especially as it relates to these governing bodies who are unnecessarily harassing professionals who are brave enough to speak out and actually help people assert their rights and enforce the law. And so we have plans to do that. We have one lawyer who's been doing a tremendous job with Stacey's Happy Place in Eckville. She was demonized by AHS and shut down over literally coffee creamer being in her bookstore. She was serving coffee as part of it, and how her business and her family have been treated have been absolutely horrible. Unfortunately, Lanny Rouillard, who's the lawyer on the file, is getting the complete runaround. And now they've brought an application to her, two out of three, I believe, judicial review applications, because she did bring it to the board, the public health board, and she's essentially appealing what happened during in those decisions, and they're bringing now an application to render them moot at this point. So justice may or may not be served, and so we're trying to see where we best fit. Helping individual Albertans and doing advocacy like we have been doing to get the word out, to remind people or tell people that if you think that this is going to be resolved through our political leader or our justice system, to think again, and you really need to think about a different solution that is going to work for Albertans and your family in particular. And you need to realize that we need to really do something different now. And so my hope is that by sharing these stories about these injustices, about the courts, there's still, CFS has a tremendous amount of power and authority. I talked to a psychologist last week, and he worked for a brief time many years ago at Child and Family Services, and he was shocked at the power that they wield. And I think what Danielle Smith or any leader who gets in should be doing is doing a review of these organizations. We know that government bureaucracy is bloated beyond belief. And not only that, we need to look at the authority that has been bestowed upon these segments of our government to see what is going on. And I'm a big proponent of holding public inquiries and getting to the root of these issues. And CFS is one of them, for sure. The colleges and professional bodies is another that needs to be looked at. And of course, the government's handling of the COVID-19 fake pandemic.
So we've got all these political leaders. We've got the ministers, but my understanding is the ministers can only do so much. I think it's the next tier, and maybe even after that kind of needs to be dismantled and set ablaze, really, because it sounds like those are the ones that are high up in the chain, that they can actually get the work done and make these changes, but they're sitting on their asses actually doing nothing and making their big paycheck. I think those are the ones that we need to be going after. So it doesn't matter who you elect into a certain position. This next level are the ones that we should really be going after. And how would we even do that?
Well, you have to get involved and you have to become part of the government. I mean, that's part of it, right? And so until we elect people who are prepared to scrutinize and make these tough decisions. I mean, I remember speaking with Todd Lowen, probably last, I don't know, March or May or April or something around then, when he was announcing that he was going to run for leader. And, he described for the group that, just as you mentioned, Carrie, that it's the deputy ministers and the people below the minister that actually call the shots. And until those people are effectively dealt with, and then because ministers will walk into a portfolio, and as you know, most political parties have a process that, you're a backbencher or you're in cabinet, and backbenchers don't really have much of a say about anything.
Yeah.
And certainly when you're a minister, he described a scenario where you might come in guns a-blazing, you have a whole bunch of things that you want to get done, and the bureaucrats tell you that no, that's actually not going to happen that way. And then of course it's compounded by leaders who also believe in what the bureaucracy is doing.
Mm-hmm. There's actually quite a few questions, and you know what, we could probably at least go through some of these and kind of check them off, and then we will try and get back on just talking about, like, there's so much to talk about. So a couple of people had asked even how Chris's court case and stuff went. So again, just to rehash that part. So Chris Scott from the Whistle Stop Cafe was basically he basically stood up against the mandates back in January of 2021. And AHS didn't like that. So they came in and forcibly tried to close him down many, many times. Our bar, my business partner, Marla Fraser, and myself had a bar called Outlaws Tap House and Bar in Calgary. And we kind of did the same thing, but we stepped in and said that we were actually going to not enforce masks because we had 3 people that worked with us that couldn't wear masks. And so we took that stance, and even just in terms of the logbooks, people coming in. If you remember that was kind of a short-lived law, but that certainly impacted us because our logbook was stolen, and then it was kind of like, well, what are you guys really using these phone numbers and for? Oh, it's for contact tracing, yada yada. So we took a stand on that, and then they ended up forcing us closed. So AHS came in and said, no, we don't agree with this. Then they put pressure on AGLC in order to take away our liquor license, which is a little tough to run a bar if you don't have liquor. And then they basically came after the city of Calgary in order to take away our business license, and then put pressure on our landlord, who essentially just met with us and basically closed that off. So that all kind of took place roughly when Chris was doing his thing. So you have to imagine, we were in Calgary, which has a lot of people, versus the Whistle Stop Cafe, which has 505 on a good day. Right. And even though they were bringing in the RCMP and stuff from Bashaw, essentially that has now since continued on and gone to court. So Chris has already been arrested for basically holding a protest or attending a protest on May 8th. He did 4 days, then he was fined a couple of things. But essentially his court on August 30th was to go back through these original CMOH order, chief medical officer order, health orders that said, you could only do such and such. And I'm not exactly sure what I can even talk about in the case, but I can probably tell this, that the Crown basically said, you know what, we're not going to care about everything that happened as of January of 2021. We're going to start on April 1st, or no, pardon me. We're going to start on June 1st, I believe is what it was. So that was after Chris was arrested. So everything that brought him up to being arrested is kind of like, don't worry about that. That's not what we're worried about. We're only going to worry about the stuff that was in place as of June. And if you remember, July 1st was we were open for summer, open for good. No, we're not. We're shut down again after 6 weeks or 12 weeks, whatever it was. So now that's gone back into court. And now it was August 30th, and then it was bumped to October, bumped to November. Nothing happens in December. So now here we are. It was January 16th in which he went into court. And really in the August 30th date, there was the arresting officers, the RCMP officers, and the AHS officer, the guy that actually wrote up the CMOH ticket, if you want to call it that. So that's it. And then there was the Crown prosecutor. Now, as of 2 days ago, January 16th, we've now got the Attorney General of Alberta involved. We've got the RCMP lawyers who were in attendance. We've got the AHS lawyers who were in attendance. And the reason is because of the disclosure on what was happening in terms of emails, text, phone documents, that looks like AHS was talking to RCMP and saying, we really got to shut this guy down. And you know what? No matter what, we got to shut this guy down, which is totally illegal. They can't do that.
Well, you know what? That it doesn't surprise me, because that's what Stacey is facing with Stacey's Happy Place. In essence, we have the Public Health Board who made these ridiculous decisions, complete bias and corruption, really, and they're trying to insert themselves into that case, into these judicial reviews, which is effectively an appeal of their decision. And so we're trying to figure out, like, on what grounds can this board insert themselves into becoming a defendant, that they're, like, it's just, it's becoming an upside down circus, and it's becoming clearer and clearer to people who are involved in these matters exactly how corrupt it is.
So there's a couple of things. So obviously Chris's case is a big case because it could have some sort of precedent going forward, but essentially backwards for cases like us. Like if we went back and asked for a documentation or some kind of disclosure about what did AGLC talk to AHS about, we might find out that they said that we should shut down outlaws, right? We also have Tipsy Cow and Hannah, that could have happened as well. We have the Noble Fox in Bashaw. We have, there's so many of them. Hockey Central and Silver Lake. All of these opened in defiance. And it sounds like AHS basically went to the RCMP and said, look, we can't do anything because we're just AHS, but we're going to force your hand in order to go in and actually close them up.
Well, the thing is, we can change the law. I mean, the solution is very simple here. We change the law and we say, no, we're not enforcing this any longer. Just like Tyler Shandros drawn the line for gun owners in Alberta. And good for him, because that's the right thing to do. But this is what needs to be done now for this shenanigans. Like enough is enough. And we need somebody who's politically motivated to actually change this. Right. And so that's where this lies. It lies with the lawmakers and their willingness or unwillingness to do so. That's where it lies. So vote somebody different. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. So because this is a live, it's interesting when you're actually doing it live, and we're an hour and 20 minutes in. When people just jump on now, they've totally missed the conversations we've had previously, right? So it's almost like, okay, when we're done, go back and rewatch it and find out if it answers some of your questions. So here's a couple of questions that have come up from APP chapter leaders, which I'm not going to say they should trump everybody else, but they're important only because they have the meetings that will talk about everything that we're talking about now, everything we've talked about in webinars. We even have a webinar on Thursday. All this stuff needs to be talked about at these chapter events. So if you want to get involved but don't really want to get involved, go and find an APP chapter. And go out and listen. You don't even have to do anything. Just sit there and listen, and maybe the chapter leaders can change your mind. So the question was, is there anything Danielle Smith can do to help the boys in jail from Coots? We've kind of talked about that. I mean, just change the laws, step up. Like, if you have to puff up your chest and say, I'm not going to stand for this, and the people of Alberta are not going to stand for that, then that's your line in the sand, right? And one person also asked for clarification as to whether or not the boys in Coots in jail, are they really in jail? Have you physically seen them in jail?
I'm going to start going around. I will document that I've seen them visually.
Yeah. Yes, they are definitely in jail, and it's
I talk to them all the time.
And I don't know what is happening with them in jail. Do they get any free time? I know people have sent like Christmas cards and even birthday cards. So what happens in that process? Do they actually get time to read them? Like,
Well, they're getting a lot.
yeah.
It shut down the Lethbridge mailroom for a while. Chris and Chris got to go down and see their cards. Jerry's getting 80 to 100. They kind of keep them for a week or two.
Yeah.
And then they let them go and see them. They can't take the cards back to their room or cell room.
Because they get paper cuts with them?
Apparently, might be a weapon. So they have been getting a lot of cards. Keep it up, because their mental health is on the line.
Yeah.
And we're pulling them through right now. These cards and these letters, that's what's keeping them going too.
How do they get a hold of the address of where they are? Can they just get a hold of you? Like, and
it's on the Alberta political prisoner website, or Facebook page. Sorry, Facebook page. Okay. And every video, I do a daily video every morning at 6 a.m. The addresses are in that video, like they're there. And
so it's only on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I know that there's a lot of people that have said, like, even for our show, these webinars, they're out on YouTube. I think they're on Rumble and BitChute. So there are other ways to get a hold of that, because in case we get censored on Facebook, at least there's an opportunity elsewhere. But if, even if you had an email address, what is your email address?
There's Granny McKay at protonmail.com.
Okay.
And then there's grannymckay.ca, and that's where the bumper sticker program is.
Yeah.
And so you can find out how to do that. And I'm really pushing the bumper sticker program. I've got them in 7 provinces right now, from New Brunswick all the way to Vancouver Island. So these bumper stickers will end up in parking lots, Walmart, grocery store. And when people ask about it, some people might get angry and say, why are you, got criminals on your vehicle? And all you have to say is innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely. And they haven't even had that opportunity.
Or I guess innocent until proven guilty. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's all you have to say. You don't need to argue, because at the end of the day, these 4 men represent each and every one of us.
Yeah.
Because if they don't get justice, none of us have justice. Yeah. And if one of us ends up in jail, I hope you've got somebody on speed dial to be your voice, because these men went without a voice for a long time.
Yeah, that's right. So, and again, questions have come up. I'll paraphrase that they're asking. So do the men already have lawyers? Have they had lawyers? Have they gone through lawyers? And what is the process of them possibly getting other lawyers, even going through other groups in order to get lawyers? So do you want to maybe just tackle a little bit of that? Maybe just, do they have lawyers, number one?
Okay.
And number two, like what's
Jerry's had a lawyer from day one. He was fortunate enough. He got somebody that didn't get badgered.
Okay.
The other 3 had lawyers that quit. Some didn't get enough money, so they quit. 2 of them are, I'm not sure. One's on trying to get legal aid right now, which is a tough go. So they've got the lawyers, but they're also being talked to by ex-lawyers to either charge $200,000 for this, or you better quit now. Like, it's unbelievable what's happening with these lawyers.
So I'm curious, like, what would be a rough number for them to actually go through this sort of a process? And you can make it up if you needed to, but just
one lawyer has been quoting that it could go as high as $500,000 for one person here. Is that right, Katherine?
I guess depending on the case and then how long it gets drawn out and the amount of research and stuff going in behind.
Does a lawyer have to kind of keep because one of them was donated $30,000+ from some people. The lawyer has taken that money, and then he wanted a lot more money and didn't have that, and he didn't have the money, so that lawyer quit. Hasn't received an invoice at all to show where the money's gone, and has also advised other lawyers to quit.
So if the lawyer, go ahead then.
Let's talk offline. And lawyers have professional obligations under the rules and the code of conduct that they have to adhere to, and accounting is one of them.
Yeah, because another lawyer, he gave a good invoice, but there was $10,000+ donated by family and friends that's unaccounted for.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a mechanism to review invoices and bills, and you can challenge them for sure. And there's mechanisms to, like complaints can be made. For instance, I don't like,
Well, these men, it's hard. Like they're inside, phone access. Like this is really, really difficult, to trying to get a lawyer in place and find out about invoicing and trying to get a phone call from it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, we'll talk offline.
Okay, thanks, Katherine.
Yeah.
But like I said, Give, Send, Go for donating.
Yes.
We've got the bumper sticker program. We've got letter writing, pray, and just keep sharing. Like even if you don't have money and you can't buy the bumper stickers and you can't donate, go to the Alberta Political Prisoners page and keep sharing. There's people out there that have no clue these men are in jail. And I think every person that was at Coots would like to know about these men, and they don't know about them.
Yeah.
So,
and it is interesting. So when were they arrested? Because that is when you say the date, it's going to kind of blow people's minds. When
February 13th and 14th.
February 13th and
2022.
Almost
2022.
Almost an entire year.
Yeah.
And they're
now
not
you think about it.
Yeah.
Let's hypothetically go back again, saying they're innocent. Yeah. How would your mental health be doing if you were sitting inside jail knowing you had not committed a crime? And that's hypothetically saying they're innocent.
Yeah. So, I would be a disaster.
Yeah. So please keep writing them. Please keep sharing hope and let's keep spreading the word. Yeah. And Danielle Smith, if you're watching this, please do the right thing. And if there's a whistleblower out there that knows anything, think about it. Think what you've done and face the music and step forward.
Yeah. So again, we can't really, I don't think we can actually talk about anything that we know about the case per se. And that's not what this is about. It's about due process and going through bail and why were they denied bail, et cetera, right? So that is kind of what we're talking about. So one of the questions, why could these 4 men not be given similar conditions as Pat King was given, or at least house arrest? And that part I don't know.
Good question.
I don't know the charges that Pat King, I don't know his charges.
Yeah, I don't know either. And as far as I know, he ended up having to sign some sort of document in order to be released and then stay off social media. And, I think these boys would probably totally take that in order to be home with their families.
Yeah. And they should be. They should be released now. Like they should be.
Yeah. The fathers should be at home. Like this is absolutely ridiculous.
7 children did not have their fathers for Christmas. Tony is an only child.
Yeah.
To his 79-year-old mother. And this is the first Christmas she's never had her son with her. This is devastating. Like Chris Carbert lost his father.
Well, yeah, like he just lost in December, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like it's a disaster.
And let's just again hypothetically say that they do get off and they're free to walk. What retribution could they possibly go back to? Could they go back and sue the Crown? Is that a thing that you can do here in Canada? Because again, it's like from what I've heard, you can't sue a doctor here in Canada, but you could sue a doctor down in the U.S.
Well, I think it's going to be mostly politically motivated in terms of we're going to need to make restitution to these people. Like there's going to have to be some truth and reconciliation with respect to how people were treated. And if we're able to turn this around, right? And so there are cases where people have been somewhat compensated, but I mean, at the end of the day, we just need to get these guys out, and
exactly,
and they do need to know that Albertans are behind them and Canadians are behind them. And I
Yeah.
think what you're doing is really admirable. I think that what you're doing is what you need to be doing and how we need to be tackling this. You know, when you have a shoestring budget, which is, you know, what we're facing right now,
Mhm.
you know, maybe there's a philanthropist out there that's willing
Sure be nice.
that sees this information come
And
across.
these were four men that were working. Like
Yeah.
these were men that were good in society.
And
Like,
business owners too. weren't
yes.
they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that business is now crumbled because they're no longer at the helm and they can't do things. And
yeah, and people lost their jobs. You know, there were employees.
that's right too. Yeah.
So
Yeah. A question that happened about a half hour ago. My apologies for just scrolling back through. Have the RCMP been charged with the equipment they vandalized in Coots? So I don't know if you know any of that story, but I can actually attest to that and say, yes, they have been charged. And
Oh, wow.
I believe it will end up going through some sort of a plea deal about that, because they have on record that they have actually said that, yes, they were the ones that vandalized. And so again, it's like if you vandalize any piece of equipment, depending on what's vandalized, I mean, if they can't use the equipment, or they have to go in and get it cleaned, or they have to, you know, it's basically out of service, you could charge people for that amount of time. Like, I think that's a pretty simple way of looking at it. If I had a piece of equipment and someone broke it, and if it was supposed to be used and that was my income, I should be able to at least get some compensation.
So is that the RCMP that would be charged, or is that the individual person? Does the uniform trump the man?
That is an interesting question too, because that I do not know the answer of.
Because you can be working for somebody, but under what guise?
You know what? I may just go through their insurance. I have no idea in that particular case, but it does sound like that's a thing. That's what's going on. Let's just see if we have any other. Do we have any other questions that maybe you want to ask Katherine or Margaret directly? You know, and by all means do that. I mean, this has been a wonderful show in terms of enlightening what's been going on with Coots, what's been happening with Lawyers for Truth, and even the legal process. And again, you know, just kind of following up on the stuff that's going on with the whistle stop, and of course all the other restaurateurs, etc. Are there any other big cases going on that are like, wow, I can't believe that we really don't know about that? Like, in terms of, is this, can you even talk on any of the CPCN stuff? Do you know anything about that? I know Leighton Gray was working on that, Jeff Rath. I don't know if anybody knows anything more about that.
Yeah, I haven't heard much from. I haven't heard anything, in fact. But I mean, I was just disheartened to hear John Carpe getting arrested.
Yes, that's right.
You know,
and they basically had to go back and find stuff on him as well, right? So I mean, he was arrested because, in theory, well, not even in theory, I guess he did hire a private investigator to follow some ministers around, and maybe that wasn't the smartest thing out of the gate. But I mean, at the time, you know, you're kind of looking and seeing what options do we have, and so here it is, like a year and change later, where they actually say, no, you can't do that, so we're going to arrest you. Is there like, can people go back further than 2 years on any of that?
Well, I think that they're going to use whatever they can. But at the end of the day, like, I think what John Carpe did in that instance by hiring a private investigator was great.
Yeah.
I was really disheartened when he, anyway, I thought what he did was the way he needed to do it, because really we're lawyers. I've hired a private investigator before for my clients, because you get to a point where you go before a judge, and sometimes they don't hear you, or they make assumptions incorrectly, and they make orders that are impractical or impossible to adhere to. And you know that in one of my cases, we were trying to go after, we wanted a practice note 8 intervention done. And in a family law, that means that it would have been a third-party psychologist report, expert report for the courts to determine where the children should live. Yeah. And they're very costly. They run at least, around 30 grand to do. And my client was prepared to pay for it and had the means to do so as well. And we weren't able to get it because, and instead of that, the judge just wagged his finger at the defendant saying, stop doing this stuff. And, it involved alcohol and abuse issues. So the only thing that we could do was to hire somebody in order to see what was happening. And because we wanted to go through the normal channels that are available to us through the court at a tremendous expense to my client, and it was denied. And so we're in these crazy times right now. And this is the other thing I think we need to think about as well. I'm not an advocate for breaking the law at all. However, we need to realize that our system is crumbling. All 3 levels of our government have failed us and continue to fail us in every province as well, and including this province. And we need to understand that we need to do things differently. And I think it's perfectly fine. I think it was perfectly fine for John Carpe to gather evidence. That's what he was doing. He was gathering evidence, and how he intended on using it, we don't know because the evidence wasn't gathered.
Yeah. But is it actually against the law to hire someone to be a private investigator? Or is that?
No.
I don't think so.
No, it's not. And I don't know all the charges, but I think one of them is obstruction.
Yeah.
And I did have that read to me the other day, and it doesn't sound like it falls within that part of the criminal code.
Yeah.
And so, these are political witch hunts. That's what they are.
Yeah. Just replying back to a couple of messages on here about some of the comments that we've already had.
Yeah, I forgot to mention too, the Yellowstone Freedom Field will be having a 1-year anniversary, and I think it's February 11th, and it's a family-friendly event. It's a potluck, and they're going to raise money for the boys too.
Yeah.
So, and it really is family-friendly, so they do ask that there's no FJT flags flying.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Mm-hmm. And where is that
it's out past Onaway. It's on the highway to Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're a good group of people. Really good group of people.
Yeah. I know Chris has taken the picker truck up there at least once anyways that I remember. And driving up to Grand Prairie and areas around there. What else have we got here? Anything else that you guys want to bring up that maybe we haven't even touched on? Anything that was in your notes to say, you know what, I really, really want this message to get through?
A good message from the men. They really, from the bottom of their hearts, thank everybody for their support.
Yeah.
It's really made a difference, them knowing they're seen now.
Yeah.
They also, like Tony says this quite a bit, he says, there's got to be a reason we're in here. It's got to do something. You can't just be in there.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to have an outcome that's going to have an outcome that's going to benefit others. Like, it's got to help somebody. It's got to help the justice system. It's got to do something. You just can't be sitting in jail and it's not bringing a light to something. And so, but they do. They thank everybody. And the cards, I get to hear it all. I get to hear everybody talk about the cards, and they're special men. I'm not kidding. They're all unique, and they're all so kind and so respectful. Like I said, I'm blessed to have them in my lives.
Yeah. The conversations I've had with the families, it's like, I can't even believe that they were even brought together. And as far as I know, they don't really all know each other.
No.
They know of each other for certain things, but Like it just seems to be, okay, I'm going to pick this guy and this guy and this guy and this
Yeah,
guy
it was
because
quite.
they needed somebody to do the fall guy. But
Yeah.
again, I don't know. I'm not making any comments because I don't really know the ins and outs of the case. And of course, we can't make that comment on whether they're innocent or guilty.
Yeah.
Again, the whole point is that they're going through something that I can't imagine what they are, and that they need some sort of a due process in order to get through bail and get the hell out of jail and go hug their families.
I'm going to, like I said, go to that Facebook page. I'm going to have the men start sharing some of their stories.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, about what they, what was day 1 like? What was day 10 like? What was day 30 like? Oh my gosh, we're going into 4 months, sharing who they are and what's going on with them.
Yeah.
They can still have a purpose.
Yeah. Katherine, did you want to say anything?
Well, no, I think just in closing, I really want to just encourage people to, reflect, take time to ask for guidance and listen for a response, and realize that, things are not getting better. They're meeting in Davos right now and making some really good plans for us, these unelected officials. And so we need to continue to talk to other people. We need to continue to call it out when we see it. And as uncomfortable as it is, we still need to do it. And because this is going to a place where none of us want it to go, and we're losing our sovereignty, we're losing our autonomy, we're losing our families, and the government, we need to scrutinize these governments. We really need to cut the bloated bureaucracy. We need to get to the bottom of what is happening in these institutions that have gone unchecked for far too long, including child and family services and these professional bodies, surface rights boards. We need to look at, whatever, WCB, all of it, because, lives are at stake. It's getting more and more difficult for everybody to live, right? We're all experiencing the high costs of inflation. And, Bill Gates has already told us, and they've already primed us for the next pandemic to happen coming out of Brazil in 2025, right? They did Event 201 a couple of months before they unrolled COVID, and now they're planning for the other one. And let's believe them when they say that they're going to do it, because they are actually going to do it. And so my hope is that people feel inspired. We have an election coming up in Alberta. Get involved however you can get involved. Door knock for your local constituency association. Give money where you can. Get people who are good candidates in where you can. I know that there's some stuff going on around the province, like them or not. Take Back Alberta has achieved some great results in their riding with respect to Mr. Hoven there, who was involved in that, and in getting people who care about these issues into places where they need to be, so that the right people can run in these elections, or at least a democratic process is laid out for people to run. And be careful, and don't be short-sighted. Think about the long term. Think about what really this conservative government is doing and not doing, and listen to what they're not saying, and look at their actions, because you will know them by their actions. And we know that we've seen another example of Danielle Smith, being a turncoat. Essentially, she let all of the freedom fighters who she she let them all down. She told them that she was going to do something. Do the right thing, Danielle Smith. Do the right thing. And I don't want Rachel Notley and those folks in either, for sure. But Danielle Smith is the premier right now. And so she's the focus of this attention. And write her. Everybody write her, and don't give her the benefit of the doubt, and don't let her get off on the promise or on the excuse that she can't do anything right now. Be the support that she needs in order to make really tough decisions. But the decisions that she will make, I believe, by standing out on these issues, are the right decisions. And I think that we need courage right now, and not self-interested politicians.
Yeah. Wow. Well, for those people that are still on, thank you so much for watching. There's so much that you could talk about in an hour and 47 minutes now. And, I've always said that APP, doing these webinars and just getting the word out, share this as much as you possibly can, because even though, we've tried to answer a good bulk of the questions or tried to answer particular groups of questions, when you share this out and people ask these questions, get back to Alberta Prosperity Project, and maybe we'll do another webinar on this, or maybe we'll do a follow-up to this, or maybe you've got another suggestion based upon another court case or something that you've had. Bring it to our awareness. Go to albertaprosperityproject.com. I know there's a website or an email. I forget it off the top of my head. But if you go to albertaprosperityproject.com, there's definitely a contact form that you can do that. So if that makes sense to just kind of wrap up right there. Yes.
Just one question. Does anybody know when the Emergency Act thing is all done? Like, when's the day that this is supposed to end?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't know. I think it's one of those things that doesn't have an end to it.
I thought it had to be done by the day that he did it.
Like
what do you mean? They're going to come out with a decision. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Like, when does it?
Oh, that's coming out in February, apparently.
Okay.
Does it have to be by the time, like he did it, what day, around the 14th or something, right?
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, it should be coming out sometime in February.
I think he has to have it done by that day. I think.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, we'll definitely have to look into that. Maybe we'll do another webinar on that day.
Yeah, we can scrutinize that.
And if the RCMP arrests me for organizing a convoy, please be my voice.
Yes.
We will be your voice.
Thank you.
And we will be down in Lethbridge or wherever it happens to be, because that's probably where you'll end up going. Yeah, I don't even, I don't even know. Someone said February 17th, but I don't know whether or not that's just a date that people have thrown out where they think, or if there's actually some actual documentation for that. So, yeah, definitely take a look. So here's the little spiel. We do weekly APP webinars every Wednesday with new speakers and new information as we go along. We also have a Drilling for Prosperity web series that takes place on Thursday. We also do that on the APP Facebook page, the APP YouTube channel. Just go to the albertaprosperityproject.com and look under the events, and you will find out exactly what's going on with all of that. And one of the things I always like to do is to acknowledge the volunteers for APP. Our greatest commodity is the volunteers who have organized any event, and whether or not it's the people working behind the camera and everything on this webinar, or even at your local chapter events, give them a pat on the back, because without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And of course, we always want to have more volunteers if we can. So if you feel like you want to get involved in something like this, again, go to albertaprosperityproject.com and find out what we can do for that. And I think that's it. So thank you very much for joining us on this beautiful Wednesday, January 18th. And I have the feeling, if anybody's really interested in learning a little bit more, I think Christopher Scott and I may do a live probably in the next 15 or 20 minutes. So you can always check us out on the Stuff Facebook page, because we actually have some other news that I'm not going to mention on this one, because it actually has no bearing on the Alberta Prosperity Project. other than they are a fantabulous organization, and I really enjoy doing these webinars for you guys. So thanks again, and you guys, thanks again, Katherine and Margaret.
Everyone.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you,
Yeah,
Carrie.
well, thank you, you too.
Thank you, PP. Thank you.
Absolutely.
This
Thank
is
you very
great.
much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.